Good morning, everyone. This is realizing one of life's little ironies and contradictions of UC Berkeley. I prepare the notes for this class in the Free Speech Movement Cafe, and then I walk back over here on the way to Warren Hall, and I stop in at the Pat Brown Cafe, because you may not realize this, you may be too young, but Pat Brown was the governor of California who ordered the police to come in and arrest the students who were in the Free Speech Movement Cafe. So you can't say that Berkeley is not even-handed. I apologize for, is Gene here? Okay. I apologize for not being to my office hour yesterday. Forgot my own office hour. I think that's pretty lame, but actually I had quite a few appointments and the rest of them had all gotten switched around, so I got confused. And I'm a professor anyway. I get to do things like that. So I will be holding an extra one today. I will be there from 12 to 1 in my office in 101 Stevens. Everything else will be by appointment. Normally it'll be 12 to 1 on Tuesday in 101 Stevens will be my office hour. Also, sorry if I sent you all the way over to that drastic waiting line at Copy Central only to discover that the reader wasn't ready yesterday afternoon. Anyway, it's ready now. Here it is. The best $27.60 that you'll ever spend right here. As far as getting into the course is concerned, from the look of things, I was assuming that we had plenty of room last time, but when I added up the number of people who were here or had their roommates check them off or whatever happened, it looks like we do have still quite a bit of a waiting list that is more than I can at the moment add to the course. So, as mentioned, I'm going to try to get a bigger room, but that is probably going to be very difficult at this time. So, as far as I'm concerned, anyone who wishes to can audit the class. That's fine with me, and I'm going to try very hard to get all the PAX majors into the list. But if you, we'll have to take another look at this at the end of next week and see where things stand. I didn't even mention it last time. It's usually the first thing that I talk about in this class is, this is partly tongue-in-cheek, the lab. PAX 94, the meditation class, is like a practicum or lab for PAX 164 series. I actually did try to get it renumbered as 164L. At one point I wanted the Committee on Courses to admit that meditation was a laboratory for nonviolence. They wouldn't let me do that. They said it has to be a wet lab, and you have to deal with actual physical chemicals, you know, you can pour into a test tube. I said, Kundalini won't do? They said, I didn't actually say that, but you can see what I'm driving at. What I'm driving at is that that's a terrific combination. Taking meditation in the morning and nonviolence later on, you'll find that they support one another very, very well. I can point you to certain people who are doing that, who can give you a testimonial for the price of a latte or whatever it is that they drink. However, the fact of the matter is, and the reason that I didn't mention it last time is that class also is up to here. We have people sitting meditating on the floor. But that's at 8 o'clock in the morning, so I may be able to get a bigger room for that one. And if you'd like to try that again, you don't have to take it for credit. I always tell the students, illumination or one unit, whichever comes first. And we're just waiting for the day that somebody says, never mind the unit, I've gotten illumined. But that's another resource for us, and I'm going to be bringing in various ones as we go along. But you've got plenty to deal with right now. But if you're interested, the Fellowship of Reconciliation, which is a group that we're going to be talking about, one of the categories of things that we're going to be learning on the level of accumulating information is organizations, who's out there doing what. And the Fellowship of Reconciliation is one of the oldest peace organizations in the world. 2 years ago, I had the emotional experience of standing on the railway platform in Cologne, Germany, which is where a German and a Brit shook hands at the outbreak of World War I and said, whatever happens, we will never let this war come between us as friends. And they started the International Fellowship of Reconciliation in 1914. It's still going on. And right now, they're having a book sale. So just go on to FOR USA if you feel you don't have enough nonviolence books already. And I would actually recommend that you just go and take a look at the title, see what's out there, whether you feel like buying more books right now or not. It'll give you a sense of what's available. But we need you right up here. Yeah. Okay, so what we'd like to do now, I didn't quite finish elaborating on the ways in which I am going to claim that nonviolence is not just a way of greasing the wheels for getting to a smoother transition into the next world order, whatever that is, whether it's what was the name of that novel, The Lord of the Flies, where we're all just sort of stranded on some desolate island somewhere clawing out of their existence, or whether we've actually built a new and more sustainable world order. So in order to get through that transition with a minimum amount of destruction, nonviolence is essential. As Gandhi said, you can have a violent revolution if you want to, but violent revolution will bring violent Swaraj. Swaraj means independence. It also means what kind of regime you have. And I thought of that in 1976, one of the great advantages of being an older person. I was around for the bicentennial of the USA, and the then president, I forget his name, he was a screen actor, had been the governor of California at one time. He was reviewing the troops. The troops were acting out Revolutionary War stuff, you know, with their stupid costumes and stuff. Sorry, I shouldn't be putting in all these editorial comments, but the fact is he was reviewing the troops between 2 inches of bulletproof glass. Because, in other words, we did create a violent Swaraj here. Because our story is that the way we created this country is through a violent revolution, through war. Actually, it turns out, are you comfortable there, Elena? Okay, great. There's one chair, so going begging here. There are historians now who are arguing that neither the Revolutionary War nor the Civil War had to get fought, that we would have gotten independence sooner without it, and we would have been able to rescue the Union without the Civil War. But that doesn't affect our story. Our cultural story that we tell ourselves is a story of what has been called redemptive violence, and because of that dedication to violence as its problem-solving mechanism, we have a violent Swaraj. So if nonviolence could provide nothing else, it will provide a mechanism for getting to a new world order, whatever that new world order is going to be, with a minimum of destruction, and that means that it'll be a less destructive world order, according to the principles of nonviolence. But I'm going to be arguing more than that. I'm slowly filling in this picture that if you look at nonviolence in the full, deep sense, the way Gandhi looked at it, it's much more than just a transition. It's a definition of the goal. It's really everything on every level. Everything you need to build a sustainable world is basically there in Gandhi's worldview. You might think, well, I've had Sid put our list on the board here from last time of the basic characteristics that we came up with for nonviolence, and we'll be referring back to that as we go into our early case studies. I want to forewarn you that the good news and the bad news about today's talk. The good news is I have some really exciting ideas that I want to share with you. The bad news is that I just got them in the FSM Cafe, so I'm not sure they're terribly well organized. I know if you're thinking, Nagler, you've been teaching this course for longer than I'm alive. Haven't you got it organized yet? I don't know. Maybe that's somehow part of the message. Maybe when I really get this course organized, I'll retire and it'll be all over. But bear with me. We have some really, I think, insightful ways of coming at this thing, and we'll have to put it all together ourselves. But what I wanted to try sharing with you now is that if you're taking controlling processes, as I know some of you are, you're looking at what are the things that shape the world that we live in, what are the forces that control and shape human behavior. And I would suggest that we look at them as a three-layer cake for right now. Structure, meaning governance, what you look in the Constitution and it mandates certain things. But also you look at certain institutions in our governance here, for example, and you'll discover to your shock that the Constitution didn't say anything about them. There's no word in the Constitution about the two-party system. But we have a two-party system which nobody has succeeded in getting out from under or disrupting. So I'm including all of that. And I remember John Burton, who was a great legislator from California. California, of course, is gifted with a handful of really great legislators. California and one in Illinois and a couple of others, and that's about it. Another illegal editorial comment on the side. But John Burton, who was really a great legislator from California, a great mentor to a lot of progressive people, he said he thinks every time he drives from San Francisco to Sacramento, he passes these flats, polar lot, I guess, wetlands. And every time he passes those wetlands, it reminds him of government. It is everywhere. It's spread out all over everything. It's going to tell you what you can do, what you can't do, but it's very shallow. There are things that create what kind of government you're going to have. So underneath the structure of things, we have to look at the culture. What are the stories that we tell ourselves about the norms of human behavior and the structure of reality? And out of these norms, we'll develop laws and documents of various kinds to control behavior. And then underneath all of that is what I was quoting to you last time from St. Augustine, his mantra, if you will, that keeps coming up in the City of God. Duas civitates, duo faciunt amores. In fact, I'm going to put that on the board. I think that's really cool. Actually, he puts it this way. My parents are looking down from heaven now and smiling because they paid a lot of money for me to get a classical education, and I'm finally using it. So let's treasure this moment. And this means, if you translate it literally, two cities are created by two loves, quote unquote. And translating that into modern idiom, there are two drives, and they create two very different world orders. And in fact, one of these places where Augustine quotes this, he says, and I translate, there are two world orders created by two drives. The love of God makes Jerusalem, and the love of the world creates Babylon. Those, of course, are Old Testament symbolism for the ideal world order, sustainable world of peace and harmony versus what? Versus South Central LA, certain parts of Chicago, and other places in the world indeed. So let each person ask himself what he loves, and he will discover what kind of world he is building. Okay. So the dominant concept of how we should fix the world is to, oh, sorry, I interrupted myself. Underneath structure, there is culture, and underneath culture, there is the amor, or the drive, that's bringing it into existence. And the dominant idea of how to fix things is to create the right kind of structure that will control what's coming out of culture. That's where you have a building on campus with very fancy graffiti all over it called Barrows Hall, and in there they have a subject called political science, another one called sociology. Well, sociology is a little more into the cultural area, but political science is all about creating the right kind of structure to make sense out of the cultural material that we've got to work with. And what I'm proposing is that what we're trying to come to now is not only a different set of values and a different structure, but a different way of going about the whole process. And that is, instead of creating a structure that will control what's coming out of the culture, we're talking about how to build a new culture, out of which new structures will automatically emerge. And a new sense of how important structures are will automatically emerge, which is that they're a lot less important than the culture and the stories that go into it. So one of the big changes that we're trying to bring about is this a new world order with a new structure and a new relationship between the various parts. And if you remember from last semester, there is a sense in which, in Gandhi's time, the structure of his movement was hierarchical, right? It had one person at the top. That was a Mahatma, or a great soul. And while his campaigns were in full swing, he did not hesitate to say, I am your general. I expect you to obey my orders. The only difference being, if you remember, that if you don't like what I'm doing, you fire me, which is not what you can do with a dictator. If you could, we wouldn't have to be sitting here having this course. So it looks hierarchical. You have a Mahatma. Underneath that, you have a kind of inner circle. People who live with him practically, they're very, very close to him. People like Vinoba Bhave and Sardar Patel, some of the people we looked at last time. Very close to that, you have the inmates of the ashram. These are people who are living in his community, following his lifestyle. It's the last detail, sort of. I say sort of because there's a story about somebody who wanted to join Gandhi, came to his ashram, and so he had a long discussion with Gandhi, and Gandhi was telling him, what you do, what time you get up, here's when we have prayer, here's when you spin, and he started telling him what he had to eat, and the fellow was sort of appalled, because Gandhi, as it turned out, had no sense of taste, no sense of smell, so he just ate exactly what he felt was healthiest for him. So the fellow comes reeling and staggering out of his hut, saying, I'm willing to sacrifice my life, but I can't eat that stuff. And he bumped into Patel or somebody who said, no, look, here, come, this is what you're going to eat. And he said, but Gandhiji told me I have to eat this. And he said, look, in matters of food, you will obey me. In all other matters, you obey the Mahatma. So with some adjustments for the fallibility of human flesh, these are people who've given up everything, living with him, and they're following his disciplines permanently. This is a way of life for them, for as long as they're going to be there anyway. Then underneath that, you have a fairly good cadre of trained satyagrahis. Satyagrahi being people who practice satyagraha. Now, they may not live in the ashram. Some of them are very, very wealthy people who lived in palaces, in fact. But they've been in campaigns with him, and they're on call. And then underneath that, as soon as I'm thinking, for example, a big campaign like the Salt March, the Salt Campaign, the Salt Satyagraha, when it gets started, all of these people are pulled into position, and here you just have recruits by the hundreds of millions, literally. out of whom there will be a few who will become Satyagrahis, and some of them maybe will percolate up and become part of the inner circle, and so forth. So this is a refresher for the A people, but you remember that in a way, what he did was very hierarchical. What he created was very hierarchical. But I think there are three senses in which it was not hierarchical, despite the fact that it looks that way on the blackboard. One is the one that I've already mentioned, that it's a provisional hierarchy. You know, he said, if you don't want me here, just let me know. I'm happy to go back to my ashram and just, you know, do a lot of meditation and spinning and whatever. The second thing is that this hierarchy was only really pulled into place during emergencies. And there's a qualitative difference almost in nonviolence, as in anything else, between emergency situations and ordinary situations. And it's a fact that anthropologists have discovered that in emergencies, societies spontaneously become more hierarchical. They have to, because you have to become efficient and you have to become coherent. If we have an outside threat, let's say there's another institution down the peninsula, which fancies itself also a high-quality institution of higher learning, let's just say, and they were to assault us in some way, and you couldn't send out 10 different people with 10 different stories about who we are. You couldn't have different behavior every 15 minutes. We'd have to pull this place together, muster out the ROTC, whatever they call it these days, military affairs, we're going to defend ourselves. And what I'm thinking now of scholar René Girard, whom I draw a lot on his work. He pulled together some anthropological studies that show that even if you take the same species, like you take the same species of chimpanzee, let's say, and you look at how they live in two different environments. If you look at how they live in a secure, comfortable environment, like up in the forest canopy where there's not a lot of trouble from leopards, they have a rather egalitarian kind of society, considering that they're chimpanzees. They're not totally egalitarian. Some things have to be controlled by threat, but they're reasonably egalitarian. Take these same animals living on the edge of the forest in the savannah where they can be spotted by any passing lion, and you'll find that there's a head chimp, and underneath him there's a cadre of subordinate chimps down onto the women, well, female chimps, and the babies. Very hierarchical because of the outside pressure. So people who like to have a hierarchical order in their culture will sometimes actually stoop to creating a sense of outside pressure, like saying we're about to be invaded by terrorists and like that, so we're going to tear up the Constitution now. This just hypothetically, taking this as an example. Okay. Do you want some paper? Okay, fine. So that's the second thing. This is a provisional hierarchy in the sense that you can fire the top command anytime you want to. It's provisional in the sense that it's only brought in an emergency. And some of you will remember that in real emergencies, nonviolence can look very, very strange. You can almost not be able to tell the difference just looking at it from behavioral level from violence. Do you remember that? You guys who were talking about? Amy, what am I thinking of here? That's right. Yeah. In case where somebody, there's not even a drawer in this classroom, so I can't do what I did last year, but in case somebody runs in here with a gun, obviously deranged, and for 1 second I think, this is a good way to get all the weightless people into the course. But no, then I have saner thoughts, and I want to do something to protect all of you, and it just so happens that I have a loaded 9mm on me, which is a little bit out of character. But believe it or not, this is the point, believe it or not, the nonviolent thing to do would be to shoot that person, because I have no other means to protect you in this emergency situation. But if I'm going to really do it in a nonviolent way, it's going to be a little bit different in terms of things that are not visible, in terms of attitude. Okay, so let's see, what would be the first thing, Joanna, would be different? I hope you guys don't mind. I'm getting maximum amount of mileage out of you people. Well, okay, I wouldn't have a gun in the first place. So the whole story is absurd, I admit that, but in its own terms, suppose it did actually happen, and I'm still claiming that in a sense this is a nonviolent act. What would that claim be based on, John? Okay, let's say I run through all the alternatives in about 8/10 of a second, and I realize I don't have any. Yeah, that'd be one thing. Yeah, Joanna? Right. Yes. Now, what Joanna said may sound a little bit silly in a way. I wouldn't want to hurt that person. Here I am shooting them. But it's not that I want to hurt them. It's that I want to protect you. And at the moment, I have no other way to do that. Okay, so in nonviolence, in principle of nonviolence, intention is everything. In fact, remember we go over the etymology of the Sanskrit word for nonviolence, ahimsa. It seems to literally mean the lack of desire to harm. Okay. And one other thing is equally important. You'd like to try. Alex, I'm putting you guys on the spot, I realize. You don't remember the other? Amy? Yeah, that's true. This is a dangerous argument, but I'm convincing myself that you'd be much better off being shot by a nonviolence professor than killing all these people and having to live with that for the rest of your life. That's true. But there's one that's, if anything, even more important, and that is the follow-up. I wouldn't derive from this the lesson that every professor should be provided with a loaded 9mm in every classroom because this worked. This is our work versus work. It worked, but it did very bad work. So instead, I'm going to dedicate myself to changing society so this kind of thing doesn't happen anymore. Tithe part of my time so that we have fewer lunatics in the world. That can possibly be derived. So, Zoe? See, this is a good question. Nagler's law, again, partly tongue-in-cheek, nonviolence plus violence equals violence. You can see why I'm not a math teacher. But the point that we were talking about a little bit last time, that if you have basically a nonviolent campaign but a little bit of violence creeps into it, that little bit can be very, very disruptive. And it's not just because of the way it'll be perceived by the public, but it does something to completely break up the dynamic. So a tragic example of this was the 1999 anti-WTO demonstrations in Seattle, where you had something like 50,000 people who were extraordinarily well disciplined and well organized and completely nonviolent,